Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am so glad that you've joined us again today. We have a really exciting guest on today. His name is Andrei Furmanov, and he is a homeschool dad and pastor in Russia. You guys, homeschooling is growing around the globe. It's not just in America. And he has a really exciting story about how homeschooling is affecting his family and how they got into it. So let me introduce you to Andrei. Andrei, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you. We got to meet you at a conference about a year and a half ago, and we got to hear you speak, and your story was so moving and inspiring. And so I would love for you to introduce your family to our listeners and then tell us your story of homeschooling, how you got started.
Mm-hmm. I'm Andrei Furmanov, a pastor, as already was mentioned here. I became a Christian way back in the 80s, still under communism. And I always called myself a pastor by default because my church was started when I was still a school teacher. And under communism, not being allowed to do that, I shared Christ with my 24 students who accepted the Lord. And so I ended up with a flock without even being trained to be a pastor. But, somebody had to take care of these kids. And so at this point, I've been a pastor for almost 30 years. It's 29 this year. And I'm a father of 3 daughters and a husband of 1 wife. My daughters are Emily, Erika, and Elsie. And at this point, they are 18, 17, and 16. All are walking with the Lord and excited about ministry. And our family is basically a team that does ministry together.
I love it.
And we are very much, we believe in family discipleship. And I just view my wife and my daughters in the first place as my primary disciples, and my wife is my co-worker and a very faithful partner and the love of my life. So this is my family.
I love that. I love it. Your family is so beautiful and so sweet.
Thank
Very
you.
gifted as well. Your girls are incredibly gifted in so many areas. Tell us your story about how you got started homeschooling.
Oh, wow. That's how much time do we have, really? But anyway, we began homeschooling only about 6 years ago. Prior to that, I grew up in this country in a socialist country, communist country, which really tried to teach us not to think with our own heads. The government was to make decisions for us. The doctors made decisions for us. In a country like ours, basically everything, your body, your soul belongs to the government, and you're not supposed to be asking questions or think outside the box. But I just remember, even when I was growing up, I had a lot of questions about a lot of things. And I guess this is the good thing about the way I turned out to be. I like asking questions, and I need answers for those questions. And with my wife and I having 3 daughters, we decided to make a very serious step of faith and not send them to daycare. Everybody sends their kids to daycare. Everybody's supposed to work. Wives are supposed to work. Everybody talks about how important it is to make more money and stuff like that. And a working wife, a working mother is considered to be such a wonderful thing. And people forget that mothers work at home so much that if a husband tries to do what a woman does at home, at the end of the day, he feels like, okay, I'd rather go to work than do what you're doing. And a lot of men testified to that.
Sure.
Wait a second. We didn't send our kids to the daycare center. Many people thought we were crazy. And then there was a time for us to send our kids to school. Everybody does it. And I'd never heard of anything like homeschooling in my country. I heard that Americans did that, but in this country, we kind of think that things come easy for Americans. It's a bunch of baloney, of course, but people have that view. And I remember I was taking my oldest daughter to school, and I was walking behind her, and she had these beautiful, ponytails, and I walked behind her carrying her bag and a bouquet of flowers, and I was in tears. I think I was the only man on the face of this earth who was like bawling when he was taking his daughter to school. I felt like I was doing something incredibly wrong, and I didn't know what was wrong, and I didn't know that there was something else that could be done. And so anyhow, she went to school, and there was one less person at the breakfast table, and then the second daughter went to school, and then the third one, and my wife and I felt like empty nesters without our kids having grown up. And And I remember what happened to our kids. We always try to raise them in the Lord, but what happened to them, they just became different. They became distant and alienated from us. And at some point, I just realized that we only spent about 30 minutes a day with our girls, because they went to school, they went to music school, they did all of their routines, sports, and everything. And by the time they were done, they were just dog tired and wanted to go to bed, and they needed to make their home assignments and all that kind of stuff. And I felt like, so why have a family if you can't raise your children the way you know you should be raising them? And I was a very strong believer in raising my girls, or kids, God's way, based on the biblical principles.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the time when God brought us to America. I've visited America at this point about 14 times. And there was one of those times. And every time when God takes us to America, I know that he wants to tell us something. And I didn't know what he wanted to tell us at that time. And so we came to visit our friends in Colorado. And it was interesting when we came to see them, they just said, oh, we kind of mixed up the dates of your arrival, and that's why we're going to go to a homeschooling conference tomorrow.
Wow.
You can take our car and drive around and do whatever, and we want to give you some money, to have fun, or you could join us at the homeschooling conference. And I'm the kind of person, I really would like to see things and experience things, especially things that are so different from what I'm used to.
Sure.
And so I said, well, we definitely go to the conference. And so went to the conference, and the first person we meet is a person that was going to St. Petersburg, Russia, which is where we're from, along with his entire family, 8 children, one of whom had just been born. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I mean, traveling to Russia. And why are you going there? And he said, well, I would like to teach Russian people about homeschooling. I was like, wow, you must believe it in it very strongly. Anyway, and I heard Kevin Swanson, I heard Ken Ham, and I saw a lot of people there. And what really struck me was the discovery that at some point in time, Americans were actually put to jail for trying to homeschool their children. I was like, oh, so things don't come to Americans too. That's interesting. I thought, gosh, America is a free country. Everybody can do, whatever they think is right. But it's like, no, it wasn't like that. People had to actually fight for their freedom, for their right. I was like, Anyway, so I experienced 3 days of homeschooling conference, a lot of great things, heard a lot of testimonies, talked to a lot of people. I was asking questions at the speed of light. And then 3 days later, our friends took us to the famous park, the Garden of the Gods. And I remember we drove up there, and we stood there looking at the mountains, at the beautiful rock formations and all that. And it just struck me, dawned on me. I thought, goodness, I know from history that sometime, not too long ago, fathers were taking their families west, going across this wilderness with no beautiful roads that brought me here by car, with nothing, just wild animals, and they just really needed to go west. They needed to explore and conquer that land that was wild.
Yeah.
And I thought, what drove them so firmly and so strongly? And then I thought, just some kind of crazy dream that they were passionate about. And I just realized, oh my goodness, that's what actually made America great, that spirit of discovery and pioneering and daring spirit, not to be afraid to try something new that you think is right. And I felt so ashamed. I thought, gosh, if some people came from Europe and settled this land and they were just so brave, and here I am, knowing that I need to homeschool my daughters, that I need to raise them in the Lord, and I'm losing them to the system. And I'm afraid to do that because of what? And I turned to my wife and said, Nadya, we're coming home and we're starting to homeschool. I don't know how. I don't know what we need to do in our country in order to actually escape jail, but I'll do that. And then as we came home, I started to explore things, and I realized that homeschooling had been allowed since 1992, since the very beginning, since communism fell. But nobody really knew about it because we're just too careless to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so anyway, long story short, we took our girls away from school, started to teach them at home, and 15 families that attended the same school, families from my church, that were going with you. And I was like, guys, I want to make sure that you're not just following us, that you're following the will of God, because it's like we might even be in trouble for that. But they said, you know what? We think we should do it. And then that family from Colorado came and shared their experience. And I remember as they came to Russia with 8 of their children, we were thinking, okay, now this is a family with 8 children, and they're homeschooling them all. And this is a family that was not afraid to come to Russia to teach us about homeschooling. Why are we afraid to homeschool our 3 girls, or 2 kids, whatever, however many kids was in each family? So anyway, it was like a huge exodus from public school system. But I'm going to tell you, the whole point was just not leaving school, but going somewhere we wanted to go. And for me, my passion was to really raise my girls for the Lord, because I always knew that I was never raising them for my pleasure. I knew that the kids were a gift from God, and they didn't belong to me. I was their daddy, but they already had a father.
Yeah.
And but I wasn't able to really teach them how to fall in love with Jesus, because I didn't have time. And the fact that we took them out of school and started to really explore how to involve God in every subject, and it really changed our lives. Our girls were just growing up away apart from us, and all of a sudden, we started to read the Bible. For the whole year, I spent every day just teaching them about Christ and their identity in Jesus. And that changed their lives, because they just realized that they didn't need to. I mean, they almost became invincible. They know that their identity is not in what they do, in not the achievements they make, but in Christ, who already accepted them. And it's amazing. We taught our girls not to live for acceptance, so that others would accept them for the good grades or whatever, but from acceptance, because they already know that the Lord loves them dearly and will never leave them nor forsake them. And they don't need to really live for anyone's pleasure. They just live out of the fullness of their lives. And we could see that they started to get involved in ministry. They started to read the Bible. They started to talk about God. We have these amazing family times when, everybody shares their hearts. And I can see that their knowledge about God became their knowledge of Him, and also turned into practical steps of manifesting that amazing love. I can see that, when in Galatians 2, Paul says, it's not me who's living, but the Lord who lives through me. I can see that in my girls' lives. And I'm so grateful. I know that it's not the magic of homeschooling, but this is the freedom we got in order to do what is right. And we also figured that, remember I told you that our girls, children they're not a bucket to be filled, but they're a gift to be unwrapped.
Right.
And I realized that our children already were designed by God a certain way, and we allowed them, in the context of homeschooling, to explore who they truly were, how they were designed by God. And like you mentioned, they're extremely talented, and I think every kid is, but we allowed the Lord to actually help them develop their special giftings. And like, with Erika, my middle daughter, she's so gifted in music. She plays the piano, she plays the harp, she plays the whistle, and she plays the ukulele. And Elsie plays violin, Emily plays guitar and the piano. But again, like Erika decided that, she wants to be a musician. But again, she doesn't need to become someone, but she is a musician at heart, but she is a child of God. That's a primary identity. But she uses music to glorify Jesus. And I see Emily is excited about technical things. She's reading a lot about business, but she would like to actually free herself up from having to go to a secular job so that she could do counseling. She really is passionate about that. Elsie is still searching, what she wants to do, but she already knows who she is, and that's the most important thing. So anyway, that's in a nutshell. Maybe it's too long, but anyway.
No, I love it. That is an amazing story. Let's take a really quick break for a sponsor, and then I want to come back and I want to talk about what your girls' response was to homeschooling, and just how you have kind of changed the trajectory of your hometown and those 15 families who came along with you.
Okay.
So you were talking about how there were about 15 families from your church who came along with you into homeschooling when you got back. And you went back and you said, okay, family, okay, girls, we're going to do this homeschool thing. What was the response from your family to doing this? Were they excited? And did having those 15 families make it easier for them?
It was interesting. Everybody, there was not even one exception. Everybody thought we were crazy. And grandparents were just upset with us. They thought we were destroying our children.
Sure.
Actually, those 15 families, came to us, and it's like they said they were leaving with us, but prior to that, for about a week, they had thought we were crazy.
Wow.
We had to actually talk to a lot of people and give account of what we truly believed in.
Mm-hmm.
There was really, for some time, there was no support. My wife's sister and her husband actually became our best enemies.
Mm.
They really like ostracized us from their family, and they just really were upset with us. Nadya's mother came to us like almost on a daily basis and called us all kinds of names and
Mm.
yelled at us for being so brutally horrible towards our children and depriving them of their rights, of the
Mm.
rights that were constitutional for education. And we had to actually, God really taught us a lot through that, because I kind of tended to get into all defensive mode and almost like become just like those people that yelled at us. But later on, I'm like, no, you can't really change anybody by yelling. Think of Jesus and his example. And I learned a lot about what it means to give account in godly way. So anyway, after about a week, those 15 families, left school.
Wow.
And it's interesting that, Nadya's sister at this point is homeschooling her children.
Wow.
you know,
That's
my
great.
my parents, they say this was the wisest decision we could
Oh,
ever
wow.
make, and they're totally supporting that.
That's
Nadya's
great.
mother is still undecided, but since her other daughter is doing the same thing, she had to quiet down.
Sure.
Um, but it was interesting because there was a lot of um, pressure, and there was a lot of gossip spread around. And you heard that story that one day the friend of my daughter's comes to us and says, "Gosh, we heard about this horrible family that is doing." Oh, no, oh, no, wait a second. Oh, it was a call. I'm on the phone right now, so
Okay. I was gonna say
anyway,
it totally
I'm
broke
sorry
up.
about
Okay. That's okay. We'll start that part over.
it. Okay, can I continue?
Yes. Yeah. 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 If you can go back to, there was a
Yes.
friend of your
Uh-huh.
daughter's.
Uh-huh. Yes, there was a friend of my daughter's that comes up to us once and says, "Have you heard about this horrifying family that's doing this horrible thing to their children? We heard that they not only had they left school, but they also took a bunch of people with them." And it was really crazy and said, "We are that family." you know, you should have seen the look on her eyes. And it was really like a paradigm shift for people, because
Mm.
people, it was interesting. In our town, we were kind of well known because I taught my girls English since they were babies, and even though
Mhm.
I have an accent, they don't have any accent. They
No.
they speak totally like Americans, and so we have been known in this town like the family that speaks English or something like that, because my girls speak English to each other and stuff. Anyway, and so they kind of think we're so smart and whatever, and all of a sudden it's like the smart people did the stupid thing, you know, and but it was interesting because when this happens, when people ask you questions, when people uh, when that paradigm shift occurs, you have a lot of opportunities to share your faith and to give account of what you believe. So, and it's interesting because at this point, people call me from time to time, and people who are non-Christians then have different reasons for taking their kids out of school, but nobody's happy with school system anymore for different
Mm.
reasons, like I said. And as a friend of mine, Chris Davis, you might have heard of him or read his books. He's an amazing homeschooling dad. He's in his 70s. He's raised 3 sons and a daughter, homeschooling them. But anyway, he wrote a book in which he said that there are pioneers, and then there are followers, and there are followers, and then there are people that are kind of lagging behind. Like pioneers are the ones that just go and make way, and cut through the path. And then there are followers who kind of feel like, I'm afraid to become a pioneer, but now that the road has been cleared, I can follow. And then there are those who just rush from one side to another, thinking like, okay, maybe I can maybe I can homeschool just in case, so that I wouldn't miss anything out. And then when things get tough, they kind of go back to, the school system and stuff. So anyway, I can see that a lot of non-Christians really don't have the good foundation for why they're doing what they're doing. But nobody is really happy with the system anymore, because the system is just like killing creativity. And, to tell you the truth, in our country, it is becoming the tool of horrifying propaganda and nationalism. And I would never want my girls to be a part of that. I actually think it's very unhealthy for any child to be there, because it's all about, like, we used to hail communism and hail Lenin, now we hail Putin. So it's just the same old stuff, just coming back with a very different, even more cruel and evil flavor. So anyway, we don't want to be a part of that. And funny as it is, or strange as it is, even non-Christians feel like something is wrong with that. So parents sense that they're losing their children. Some don't. Some really are going along with the system. But there are some that call me up and ask me lots of questions. And in a way, I'm sort of viewed like some kind of homeschooling guru, which I don't really think I am, because I have very little experience. Well, more than most people in Vyborg.
Yeah, you have a whole lot more than most do.
Yeah, but anyway, it's really exciting to be able to help them. And this gives me an opportunity to talk about my faith, not only about school, but it's like about the true reason why I'm doing that. And it really opens a way for a lot of incredible conversations. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
That's amazing. How many families are there in your hometown who are homeschooling now?
More than I know, I bet,
Okay.
But I know at least 30.
Okay, so it's growing still.
Oh, yeah. We have a very small town by Russian standards, and people in Russia basically are very afraid of change. They are very fatalistic. So, so people that are not are considered to be very crazy, like myself.
So of those 30 families and looking at those kind of 15, 16 families, including yourself, who started 6 years ago or so, how have you seen that change the culture of these families individually? Have you seen the kids change, the families change as a result of homeschooling?
Well, it's interesting. I realized that the problem that occurs a lot of times, that people take their kids out of school, but they don't take school out of their system. And which has been a problem. It was actually a problem for us the first year. And it took me going to a conference, a homeschooling conference, and meeting some radically amazing people. Some of them very well known in America. I'm not going to mention their names, but because some people think they're great, others think they're horrible. Yeah, but I just love people that are different, and I don't have to necessarily agree with all of them or about every little thing, but I just like people who think outside the box. Anyway, and those people helped me see that, Andre, you're still thinking like the system. And so I repented of that, and I said, okay, now I need to have a biblical worldview. So anyway, those families who realize that they need to get this system out of their household, they've really changed radically, because it seems like it allowed parents to focus on God more in their personal walk, and it allowed the children really focused on what is true and what is right and what is worthwhile. It's interesting, because those kids do not really strive for getting a degree, but they're striving after pleasing the Lord. And if a degree is a step towards that,
sure,
they would do it. It's amazing, because a typical Russian person just goes through all these hoops. Just you're born, you go to kindergarten, you go to school, you go to college, then you get a job. And that's that. Well, one of the conferences, one of the craziest and very controversial figures came to that conference, which was Ray Perry. You meet this woman once, you change forever, and it's just amazing. So when she came and she shared with us her philosophy on life, I just realized, oh my gosh, I still had that in me, that my girls are being raised and we're doing all these, Christian things, but then, they grow up and they figure out a way to get a job. So you raise a kid to get a job, and all of a sudden it's like, no, we need to raise them to be able to be free. Right. And so I would say that those people that really got that, they are raising their kids differently. And we don't live for today, we live for eternity. We live today, but not for today. We live for eternity. And they're trying to make eternal difference. And the methods they choose and the way even they schedule their time is just so different from a typical homeschooler that has not figured what it is truly about.
Yeah,
Do
well,
that make sense?
oh, that makes absolute sense. I mean, it's
Hmm.
the same way here in America, in that, most people, when they start homeschooling, they think they're bringing the classroom into their home, and
Hmm.
they try to just replicate what the classroom looks like.
Right, right.
And pretty quickly, I think most start to realize that you can't do that. Now, certainly you can have structure and you can have your different subjects and all,
Absolutely.
but it's not just about the academics. Um,
Hmm.
it's about their character and about growing them as people. And I love that you talk about, success and the idea of going to college and things. We're certainly not anti-college, but we're also
No.
not, you know of the belief that every kid must go to college in order to be what some would consider successful.
Hmm.
God has called everybody to do something different with the gifts He's
Hmm.
given them, and so no, I
Hmm.
completely understand it and agree with that, and I think that's a very exciting thing.
Hmm.
Uh, Really a great thing. Talk about your family and what you're doing in ministry, because I know that you're a pastor and you've got a ministry that your family is involved with. What do you do as a family for
Hmm.
ministry?
It's amazing how much scope for Christian work there is for us as a family. Well, of course, I'm a pastor and I do a lot of teaching, training, counseling, and that kind of stuff. And it's amazing because as I trained my girls, they actually doing the same thing, meaning teaching, training, and counseling their peers. We've gone through a lot of amazing. Well, one of the most amazing courses I've ever gone through and apply in my life is called Victorious Christian Living. Basically, I mean, it's nothing but the Bible, and it just
Mm.
shows to you how to solve any issue just going through going to the Lord with it. And I've taken my girls 3 times through this, and they're so eager to pass it on to others. They've been able, I mean, the oldest two are just really walking in this freedom in the Lord, and they're really able to share it with others. My girls do a lot of things, like they work a lot with children. They serve families. They can see that those young families, young couples that have children, have babies, kind of fall away from everyday church life. And one of my girls, Emily, said, I just really feel like I would like to make it my ministry, and not a job, but a ministry. I would like to
Mm.
help those families. And my girls would go and babysit for the families that would like to attend a small group or go to a ministry team meeting. It's not just like, oh, I'd like to go to the store and go shopping. No, no, no. My girls don't do that. But it's like, okay, if you want to attend the church, if you really need to go to a meeting in the church, or would like to have a getaway together to build the relationship between the husband and wife, they would just be like, I'm willing to babysit. And it's amazing because in our church, because of people like my kids, there is never a lack of babysitters. A lot of times when I come to America and some of my friends go like, would like to go out, but we can't because there's nobody to babysit, and we have 8 kids and we don't have enough money to
Mm.
hire a person. It's like, well, I wish my girls were there, you know,
Mm.
because they would totally tell, it's like, well, every Wednesday I'm yours, just, invite me over, I'll take care of your children.
Yeah.
So they do that. They do a lot of music work. My daughters, they all play musical instruments, and Erika arranges different pieces for different groups of instruments. And so they do a lot of stuff for Christmas, for Easter. They used to go, when we had this mission in a small village close to Vyborg, they used to go there and bring musical education to kids and adults in that really dark little village. We're not allowed to go there anymore because anyway, it's a government involvement that actually prevents us from going there at this point. But they do a lot of music work with children in my church, and they prepare worship for children's Sunday school. They do a lot of music for youth ministry, teenage ministry. It's just amazing. It's like
Mm.
they feel like the music is not their goal, it's a tool that they use
Sure.
to teach people how to worship, and they do that. They also do a lot of cooking for different projects, like um, orphanage project that we have. Like, my girls really love to take some tough assignments. For example, in an orphanage, the kids never have pancakes because it's too complicated to make pancakes for so many children. So it's like every time our team goes there and there is a need to make pancakes because kids really love those. So they would just spend the whole evening just, making pancakes, frying pancakes for those kids. And it's like every day there is something. There's always every opportunity to minister, every opportunity to share with kids the Bible, to lead a small group. I mean, my girls are doing that. It's just amazing. I feel like I would never be able to do the job that I'm doing without them. It's like my wife, she does a lot of victorious Christian living counseling with women, and she also does a lot of children's work. It's just basically everything I do, they do on a different scale, but
yeah. And you have more opportunity to do that because you're homeschooling them. You had said before that when they were in school, you felt like you only had about 30 minutes a day with your girls. And now that they're home, you get to serve together as a family, which is incredible.
Exactly. And we can cancel some of our plans and just say, okay, instead of that, this is the need.
Yeah, that's great. Really quickly, what is it like to homeschool in Russia in regards to like government laws and stuff? Are you just free? Because you said as of 1992, I think that it has been legal. How does that work with the government there in the system? Do you have to report back to your public school system or do they have to do testing?
Yes.
I know that's one of those questions that here it's different in every state. And so everyone is always wondering, well, how is it even possible for you to homeschool there?
It is important for us to have certain tests, to pass certain tests and ensure that the government gets the results. And after the 9th grade and the 11th grade, we have 11 grades here altogether. We have to pass the governmental test, and that's what my youngest is doing right now, and that's what my second daughter is doing at the same time for the 11th grade. But anyway, the thing is, that it's all doable, it's possible, it's all legal on paper, but depending upon where you live and depending upon who is running the school you're sort of officially attached to, connected to, they can either make your life living hell or it can be a piece of cake. So in our case, the principal of the school we're connected with, she's just in love with us. And basically, we as a family get green light always. And she's like, she actually goes like, you know what? I know that you don't even have to pass some of the tests that are optional. She's like, you don't have to pass that, only the ones that the government requires. So she's just so amazing to us. But it's a very rare situation. The problem with Russia, though, is that Russians are trying to brainwash their people right now. And like the relationship between Russia and America is getting worse. I think it's as bad as it was during the Cold War. And so in order to brainwash people and continue pouring, kind of supporting and building up that negative attitude to America, you have to have a system for doing that. And the school system is doing it really well. Yeah. So in a way, even though it's legal, it looks like the government is really not happy with the fact that a lot of people walk away from that system and teach the kids differently. Like, for example, when the Crimea was conquered by Putin, I shared with my family biblical principles of why it was wrong. And my girls were not ashamed to say it. And gosh, we were called pro-Americans, traitors of our country, people that need to be crucified, people that need to be cast out forever, and that kind of stuff. And we really are notorious for just thinking differently.
Yeah.
But it's like when I was raised in this country, I was lied to so much that I decided I'm never gonna, lie to my daughters, even if that's what people call a white lie. It's like, no, I want them to really know what's going on. And for us, the Bible is the guiding force, the guiding light. I mean, it's Jesus. And so it's like, I will share with them biblical principles. So they think freely and they think biblically. And that's what the government is not happy about.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like God is really showing you much favor where you are and giving you great opportunities and opening big doors for you to be able to impact the lives of many people in your area. I think it's amazing what you're doing. We're about out of time, but I have one more question for you that I would love for you to answer. You're in Russia. Talk to the American parent right now who's listening to this, obviously most of our listeners are American, what message would you have for us Americans, and about American culture, and why should we homeschool? I know why you homeschool, and I understand, obviously you do it for the same reason that many of us do it. But looking at it culturally, why should Americans homeschool? Looking on it from the outside.
I used to come to America way back in the beginning of the 90s, and every time I came to America, I had this amazing experience, every time without fail. Sort of like some load was lifted from my shoulders each time I landed in the States. And that lasted until, I guess, 2011. For some reason, during my visit in 2011, I just came there, and I felt that oppression as much as I feel it here. And I was like, where is my America that I love so much? And spiritually, I just felt like it was gone. And I talked to my friends. I said, is it just me, or maybe there is a reason for that? And they go like, there is a reason for that. And as I see at what's going on in America, it's still my favorite country. I have to be honest. I still love it so much. But I can see that people there are losing the sight of why they live, and how much they have, and how much they need to be appreciative of everything that the Lord gave them, and not proud, but grateful. And when you're proud, you just think you deserve it. When you're grateful, you go like, wow, God, you gave me so much, I want to use it for others. And it seems like the government in America is no better than ours, really. I mean, and the schools there basically are also a tool for teaching kids
indoctrination,
the way of thinking. Yes.
That's right.
And if you truly want to change this world, we really need to teach our kids to be free. And free, I don't mean like do whatever they want, but the truth will set you free. Honestly, how much time do American parents invest in their children? How much time do fathers invest in their children personally, so that they would stand strong on the Bible, on the foundation of God's word, and make it a part of who they are? I talk to a lot of American kids, and it really saddens my heart to see that, a lot of kids that grew up in American families, when you ask them, what is your passion? They just go like, well, graduate from college, get a job. And I'm like, really? That's all? And the thing is, a lot of my friends' daughters, who are a little older than mine, have been getting married lately, and I talk to their fiancés, what would you like to do in life? And they just give me a bunch of stuff that's not even worth living for. And I had my girls hear that, and I said, girls, never marry a guy who leads you nowhere, because that's exactly where he's going to lead you. Right. I feel like it's us fathers, in the context of home and family discipleship, that need to instill this passion for the truth and for Christ, and for ministry in our sons and daughters' hearts. And I don't think school will ever be able to do it, even Christian school.
No. Yeah.
I would say that.
I love it. Well, Andre, thank you so much for your time today. I love your story. I love what God is doing with you and through you and your family. And you have such an incredible testimony. And I'm so grateful for the way that he's using you.
Thank you.
Not just in Russia, but here. I know we know many people who know you and who have met you. And you are such an inspiration and encouragement to so many, including our family.
We might be back this summer.
Yeah. Oh, come back for sure. We would love to see you again. But thank you for allowing the Lord to use you, and blessings to you. How can people support you and your ministry there?
Well, pray for us, because every time we want to do something in this country, it's always a struggle. It's always a struggle. Actually, something that I love in America still, even in America after 2011, in America, you still have so much freedom. You have no idea. Unless you lose it, you'll never understand how much. So just trust me that you have it. Yeah. In Russia, the simplest things is a struggle, is a fight. And we feel like anything we do, it's like there's a threat, physical threat. And spiritual threat. So please pray for us. And any time you guys are able to come here and minister, like bring us some fresh ideas about homeschooling, about making business, about thinking freely, please do that. People like Ray Perry came here and did that, and it's like she changed lives of many people just by being a testimony, by teaching us the right things. So if that's what your question was about.
Yeah, no, that's great. Is there a way that we can support you financially?
Yes, I'm actually on staff with CRM Nova Ministry,
Okay.
and I can send you information about what we're doing in our account with CRM that you could send finances to.
Okay. Okay. We'll put those links in the show notes then so people know how to do that. But we will certainly be glad to pray for you and encourage you and support you in any way that we can. So thank you so much for your time today, Andre. You are a huge blessing. And thank you for listening to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast today. If you want to know more about Schoolhouse Rocked, if you are trying to figure out what we are all about, we're actually in production on a homeschool documentary right now called Schoolhouse Rocked. And then, of course, we've got the podcast and all sorts of other things to encourage and equip you in your homeschool journey. So go to schoolhouserocked.com. It's ROCKED, schoolhouserocked.com. And you can learn a whole lot more about what we're doing. So thank you guys for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Andre. Enjoy the rest of your day. And please give hugs to all your girls for us.
I will. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. We're